us. Let's begin with our opening remarks from Jorge Duran, Chief of the Secretariat of CIPO-AS. There are conversations capable of transforming perspectives. Spaces where deep knowledge in physics, technology, and software architecture combines with strategic vision to generate concrete solutions for complex business challenges. This is how we think. This is how we build. Our enterprise solutions are based on neurodivergent methodology, which applies systems thinking to identify non-evident connections. We design architectures that simplify complexity and produce scalable code, created by minds that process information differently. Where others see problems, we see systems with optimization potential. Our cognitive capacity translates into practical, efficient, and sustainable solutions. We create functional architectures that solve complexity with technical and operational elegance. The results are measurable. Over 100 digital events produced for the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States, connecting with more than 100 countries across Latin America and the world simultaneously. 50,000 certificates issued in Mexican ports with global traceability for international companies prove it.
For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. We will now start the webinar.
Hello, good morning. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Excellent. Well, good morning to all the audience. My name is Jorge Duran, and I am the Secretary of the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States. And we are here today in the webinar, Investing in the Future, Technical and Financial Instruments for Port Decarbonization in the Caribbean. With that in mind, I would like to first and foremost thank our speakers, Ms. Suzette Balkaran, Energy Efficient Advisor at the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center, or MTCC, for the Caribbean in Trinidad and Tobago. Susie, nice to have you. Thank you so much. Mr. Michael Wharton, from Assistant Vice President for Marine Operations at Tropical Shipping. Thank you so much, Michael. And Mr. Dwayne Squires, Portfolio Manager for the Economic Infrastructure Division at the Caribbean Development Bank. Thank you so much, the three of you, for supporting this important work that we do. Thank you for sharing your time, your knowledge, your expertise with the audience that we have. And in that sense, it is important that I tell you that we here at the CIP have 6 priority areas that have been determined by our member countries, which are all the sovereign nations of the Americas, from North, Central, South America, and the English Caribbean. And we are now in an era where climate change is no longer an if, where the effects of climate change can be felt every year, especially in the Caribbean region with the different atmospheric phenomena that take place. But we also have the sea level rise. We have the traffic of the cruise lines. We have several things that have been now labeled or selected as things that we must change, that we must adapt to this rapidly changing environment by reducing our carbon footprint, the carbon footprint of the port, the carbon footprint of the equipment and infrastructure of the port. And of course, this is just the start of it. So in this sense, we need to look at the Caribbean, and this is especially geared to that, as how they do the energy transition from the greenhouse producing fuels to any number of alternative fuels, and nobody knows which one of these will win at the end of the day. The market forces, I believe, and the supply chains to have this ready are important. So I do want to tell you that in today's event, we have over 150 people that have registered, even though there's only 67 right now. And we basically have registrars from registrations from every country. And I'm going to read the list. It's 31 countries, and I believe it worthwhile to know that we have representatives of both port authorities, national port authorities, and private sector from Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Barbados, Belize, Benin in Africa, Bonaire, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, France, Grenada, Guatemala, Guyana, Honduras, Jamaica, Kenya, Mauritius, Mexico, the Netherlands, Panama, Peru, Paraguay, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Tanzania, Trinidad and Tobago, Turkey, the United States, and Venezuela. And this, of course, just proves how important and how this issue of decarbonization, of energy transition is not only for our region, but for other regions of the world. So I don't want to take any more of your time. The people are here to listen and watch the presentations from our experts. But before I give the floor to Mona Swoboda from the Secretariat, who will moderate the session, I do want to extend my thanks, special thanks to Jennifer Nugget Hill from Tropical for her support, as well as the technical team of our strategic partner, Real ID, Martin Santillan and Dan Guerrero, and of course, last but not least, to Ms. Monica Blanco from the Secretariat, who is responsible for the organization of this event. Ladies and gentlemen, wishing you, or sure of it will be a very interesting morning. I now turn the floor to Mona Swoboda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jorge, for your welcome remarks. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, as Jorge said, Investing in the Future, Technical Financial Instruments for Port Decarbonization in the Caribbean. So yes, today we will have a regional emphasis on the Caribbean region, but we're very excited that so many participants from across the globe are joining us for this important discussion. Like Jorge said, my name is Mona Swoboda, and I am the program manager at the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States, and I'm very honored to be moderating today's session. So as Jorge mentioned in his welcoming remarks, decarbonization is one of the most challenging issues facing Caribbean ports today. The rising climate risks, stricter international regulations such as the IMO's pending discussion on the adoption of the net zero framework, and limited access to technical as well as financial resources create a very complex scenario and a complex environment for port operators and governments alike. And so with that in mind, today we will hear from experts about practical solutions and strategies to modernize port infrastructure, to implement energy efficient measures, and unlock the financial capital needed to drive this energy transition. So as Jorge mentioned it, the webinar will feature insights from MTCC-Caribbean, Tropical Shipping, and the Caribbean Development Bank, focusing both on the technical and the financial instruments to support port decarbonization and climate resilience. And together, we will try to explore opportunities which support ports and shipping operators in small island developing states in adopting climate resilient and sustainable practices. Before we begin with our first speaker, I'd like to just very briefly share the flow of today's session. So we'll start with our three presenters. I will introduce them. They will kick off with their presentation. And then after the presentations, we will have a 10-minute Q&A session. And the webinar will close with remarks from Jorge. So we will have Jorge back at the end. Without further delay, let me invite our first speaker, Our first speaker is a dear friend of the SIP, Suzette Candace Balcaran. She is the Energy Efficiency Advisor at Maritime Technology Cooperation Center Caribbean, MTCC-Caribbean, and she's a senior instructor at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. She has extensive regional experience in maritime decarbonization, having supported major initiatives on greenhouse gas inventories for ports, digitalization of port operations, and the implementation of MARPOL Annex 6 across Caribbean states. Suzette played a leading role in generating the Caribbean's first baseline on-ship energy efficiency and has contributed to multiple regional capacity building programs on low carbon and energy efficient maritime operations. Through her research, she works at the intersection of sustainability, technology, and human capital development, supporting the Caribbean's transition toward resilient, modern, and climate-smart ports. And in addition to her technical and academic work, Suzette serves as the Vice President for Research and Development of the Women in Maritime Association Caribbean, WEMAC, advancing gender-responsive innovation, training, and leadership within the sector. Suzette, you are a powerhouse, and we're very much looking forward to your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mona. I'm just sharing my presentation. Yes, thank you very much to OES and to SIP as well for inviting MTCC Caribbean to be part of this dynamic discussion. It's a privilege to be here with Tropical Shipping and CBD and other regional partners and international partners as we explore towards the sustainability, resilience, and competitiveness of ports in the Caribbean. Today, I am speaking to you as the Energy Efficiency Advisor of MTCC Caribbean. I'm Suzette Balcaran. And I would like to speak to you from a very practical standpoint, how the ports in our region can realistically begin to accelerate and sustain their decarbonization efforts, even with whatever limited resources that we may have, and how MTCC Caribbean is helping to make that possible. So in the global scenario, as was discussed by Jorge and Mona, basically, Caribbean ports are experiencing so many pressures, from environmental to financial to regulatory, and basically we need to have urgent action. The physical impacts of climate change cannot be unseen. It has been more demanding, it has been more damaging. We have been exposed to so many elements of nature. And we have seen where port operations have shut down, we've seen where infrastructure has been damaged, and where supply chains have been broken. Secondly, even though the IMO's net zero framework is still under discussion and formal adoption has been delayed, the direction of travel is clear. So we have tighter fuel intensity limits, we have carbon pricing, and we have stronger pressure to cut emissions in line with the IMO GHG strategy and meeting our 2030 and 2040 checkpoints. Ports now have to respond not only to the environmental responsibilities, but they also owe it to their clients, which are the vessels that they serve. And thirdly, the global scenario basically is that ports are facing real financial challenges. So many ports within the Caribbean are small, they are resource constrained, and they operate with aging infrastructure. So modernization will always require investment. And in order to have investment, we must be able to attract funding, which would require data, planning, and credible proposals. For these reasons, it's no longer just to remain competitive, but we must be able to be more resilient going forward. So MTCC role, our role basically is to help the Caribbean ports and the maritime stakeholders to understand their emission profiles, to identify practical, energy efficient, and climate resilient measures, to build local technical capacity, and to pilot new technologies. We do this by adopting gender-responsive decarbonization initiatives and also to prepare projects for funding. The Maritime Technology Cooperation Center is hosted at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and it was established under IMO's global MTCC network, the global GMN network. And what we basically do is support developing countries into transitioning towards low carbon maritime operations. And importantly, we work to ensure that no port within the Caribbean and well, internationally as well, no port is left behind. So we've been busy since 2017. We've been creating emission baselines and databases. We've created an online voluntary reporting system where it is that the Caribbean countries were coached into fuel consumption reporting. We've conducted GHG inventories and emission assessments to help ports understand what their carbon footprint is and to identify what reduction opportunities exist. We've supported digital transformation through port call optimization, through data collection systems and energy monitoring tools. And we've also been leading regional training on biofouling management, alternative fuels, and energy efficient practices, all embedded within our agenda action plans. So MTCC-Caribbean plays an central role in advancing low carbon, environmentally responsible maritime operation in the region. And this is primarily through, right now, two major IMO-backed initiatives. This is the TEST, the Transfer of Environmentally Sound Technologies Biofouling Project, and the IMO CARES project, which is the coordinated actions to reduce emissions from shipping. These both programs basically are what we are busy with at the point in time. Under the TEST project, MTCC-Caribbean leads regional and national capacity building activities on marine biofouling management. And through the IMO CARES initiative, we support accelerated uptake of environmentally sound technologies. Other initiatives that we've been busy with as well, through the Inter-American Development Bank funded studies. And I would like to also say thank you to Tropical Shipping and Mr. Michael here online with us as well for helping us with our carbon intensity indicator report, also with our regulatory gap analysis that we've been busy with, the port emission inventories and port emission reduction strategies. We have also taken leading roles in producing emission inventories for ports within the Caribbean. MTCC-Caribbean also works with industry players on alternative fuels pre-feasibility studies. Actually, today we are handing over one of our reports within Trinidad and Tobago concerning one of these feasibility studies. An onboard wind-assisted technology research and development and deployment project, and climate safety through academic industry synergy. So through 3 pilot projects, public-private partnership, having gender action plans, and capacity building, we are advancing low-carbon shipping through training, technology, uptake, and equality within the region. I wanted to introduce I'll actually be touching on most of our pilot projects here. So one of our pilot projects that we are busy with here is the renewable energy micro-powered microgrid, where we are implementing a renewable energy powered microgrid to decarbonize port operations within the Basseterre Deepwater Port in St. Kitts and Nevis. The technology we're using here is a wind turbine with storm resilient features and a smart connection microgrid. So we are working with St. Kitts and Nevis with a target to have an annual GHG emission reduction of over 300 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. We are meeting up to 46% of the port's annual energy needs, hoping to have annual financial savings, where we also would be developing the capacity and skill transition towards green jobs within St. Kitts and Nevis. And throughout our entire operations, we are always committed to gender balanced participation. This project is ongoing. It has started already, and I would also like to take the time to say that we will be having our first our national workshop in St. Kitts and Nevis in February of 2026. And the idea here is to invite persons to make sure that, yes, we are trying to meet up to 46% of the port's annual energy needs, but there are also other projects that could be implemented to make this 100% of the port's annual energy needs. The additional outcomes would be to reduce fossil fuel dependency and cost savings, have capacity building for port personnel, hands-on technical training in system operation, including the digital monitoring and the use of the wind energy equipment, Also, to explore the feasibility of scaling the technology to other ports in the Caribbean. The idea behind all of our projects are to show how it can be scaled up throughout the Caribbean, and to explore financial mechanisms for replication of the pilot project. Another pilot project that we are working with as well is the retrofitting of an existing vessel to become full zero emission. This is through having a propulsion system with a marine electric motor installation. We are also working where it is that we would be providing the shoreside charging points at the port. And throughout this, there will be capacity building for the port personnel in shore operation, well, shore power operation, safety, maintenance of such equipment, and also seamanship training expansion on board the vessels. There's also emissions reduction from using this onshore power. And the idea again is to have regional replication in alignment with our decarbonization initiatives throughout the Caribbean. Our third pilot project that we're busy with as well is reducing GHG emissions with advanced anti-fouling hull coating. So here it is that we have a tug vessel that has the anti-fouling hull coating applied to it. And the application of this coating is to assess the effectiveness of it within the Caribbean region, especially in reducing the GHG emissions. The initiative not only aims to reduce the footprint of tugboats in the coastal environment, but it will also contribute to the performance and the longevity of the ships operating in coastal waters. With successful implementation, we are hoping that the project would result where we have a reduction of up to 10%. And with this particular company and their fleet of vessels, it's expected that we will probably have this from each participating ship going forward. So MTCC-Caribbean has been working really hard to build capacity for climate resilient personnel within the maritime sector. So we have strong emphasis on training port personnel, enabling ports to evaluate what are the innovative technologies available, maintain low carbon systems, integrate sustainability into their daily operations. Our capacity building initiatives ensure that our workforce is prepared for the future of green ports, not just having the infrastructure there. Under the test biofouling project with the capacity building, we've delivered online and in-person capacity building workshops on marine biofouling, on biofouling risk assessment, and in-water inspection methodologies. We've also held technology demonstration pilot projects where it is that we've had regional demonstration pilots in Panama. And I have some pictures here just to show we've done it in Panama and we've done it in Mexico, we've done it in Ecuador, where we're showing the in-water inspection ROV. So basically, MTCC stands as the medium between the technology provider and the ports. So we stand on integrating gender equity into all our decarbonization activities, and we recognize that having diverse teams always build more resilient systems. So through collaboration with WIMAC and other women in maritime, we've promoted female participation in technical training and project implementation. So under the IMO Global Strategy, where basically speaks to positioning gender equality as central to sustainable maritime development, we've actually captured it under our Gender Action Plan as we are in phase 2 under our GMN projects. And we have seen it where it is that we have a lot more women's involvement in demonstration projects. And our Gender Action Plan basically has core objectives, key action areas to ensure that we strengthen the capacities of these women in maritime. So our vision for decarbonization to build a low carbon, inclusive and resilient Caribbean maritime sector where innovation, training and equality drives transformation. So our approach includes training. So we're building capacities and the skills that are needed for green maritime operations. We are innovating where we are demonstrating. So we've passed the part of planning. We are actually demonstrating and implementing the low carbon technologies and scalable pilots. We've been empowering women in leadership and participation in all aspects of these projects. And we are we are aiming for always for collaboration, so partnering regionally through an regional industry alliance and different women in maritime networks. So, a key challenge that remains for most Caribbean ports is preparing projects that meet the requirements of financing institutions. So as much as MTCC has been building on capacity and we've been being the medium for technology providers, we have recognized that a big challenge for Caribbean ports is always preparing a proposal that meets the requirements for financing institutions. So MTCC-Caribbean, we provide support to ports in converting their technical assessments and baselines into concept notes, feasibility studies, emissions reduction projections, and investment-ready frameworks. So demonstration pilot projects are used now basically to prove the feasibility of these solutions and help unlock capital for scaling them across the region. And this support helps ports to access what climate finance is available to meet the requirements of the development bank funding and to support public-private partnerships. So within the MTCC Caribbean, we've developed, we are establishing a regional industry alliance. And the objective of this is recognizing that no single port or country could meet decarbonization targets in isolation. MTCC Caribbean is facilitating the creation of a regional industry alliance to unite Caribbean maritime stakeholders and to drive decarbonization initiatives. And the RIA serves as a platform for knowledge exchange, technology access, and resource mobilization. And I was asked by my team to show this for a brief second if anyone would be interested in joining the interim Regional Industry Alliance with the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center. And we've already put forward here the draft terms of references for the RIA. So please feel free to scan it, and it will be available within the presentation after as well. So while the IMO's net zero framework is still being finalized, we need to recognize that the Caribbean ports do not need to wait for what the decision will be coming out of MEPC. By improving operational efficiency, tightening our energy management, investing in energy efficient technologies, building our human capacity, we are able to cut our emissions currently. And we can lower our operational costs. And we could be ready to plug in directly into the global net zero regime. And I'm including here the people behind MTCC Caribbean, basically our team. We do have our director and GHG advisor, Mr. Stefan Nanan. We have Michael Razak, the deputy director and project manager, myself as energy efficiency advisor, as well as our officer, Mr. Nathaniel Davis. But what I wanted to include here is that we do have subject matter experts and international stakeholder networks that we've built while MTCC Caribbean has been servicing the entire Caribbean region. And we are located within the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and we do have the wider UTT expertise when it comes to, developing grants and developing proposals. And this is how we see the practicality between academia and getting the funding that the ports need to move forward in this decarbonization. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much, and please feel free to reach out to MTCC Caribbean.
Thank you very much, Suzette, for your fantastic presentation. And I would like to especially highlight something you mentioned in the beginning of your presentation, that is the need for data. So congratulations on all the work that you're doing there in creating that baseline, and then leaving us at the end with that call for collaboration, which is key. And I think that's also a reason why we're here today, right? Is to bring the different stakeholders together and the different partners together. So thank you very much for that call to action as it relates to collaboration. And I'm sure many folks will be reaching out to you. I already saw someone in the chat asking for your contact information. So we will make sure that folks will be getting your contact information. Thank you very much again, Suzette, and I will see you later for the Q&A.
Thank you.
You. Up next, we will hear from Michael Wardwell. He is the Assistant Vice President for Marine Operations at Tropical Shipping. Tropical Shipping is an associate member of the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the OAS, so we're always very, very excited to have the colleagues from Tropical joining us for these important webinars. Michael is a seasoned maritime professional with over 25 years of experience spanning sailing, tanker and container vessel management, consulting, and senior shoreside operations. He's currently the Assistant Vice President for Marine Operations at Tropical, having previously overseen vessel operations, technical management, and crew management for a fleet of 17 ships. His past roles include principal consulting work in maritime and risk management, as well as senior leadership positions at OSG Ship Management, supporting global technical operations, regulatory engagement, and multinational crew training. Wow. Michael, you are, just like Suzette, a true powerhouse. So I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, and the floor is yours. And then would just remind you to unmute yourself, Michael, and then we see your presentation. We're good to go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time. I appreciate everyone here and listening and trying to work through these challenging times that we're having. Tropical's been around for 60 years. We've been through a lot of ports and seen a lot of things. And as a shipping company with the net zero framework and the changes that are being asked, it's a heavy lift. It's pretty impressive. This is kind of where we go. This is where our experiences are that we see throughout, the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and South America. And when we talk about decarbonizing in the area and we look around, that's a big footprint to sort of cover and try to all pull together as a group and figure out how to most quickly and efficiently work through this challenge that we have. The world has places that may be better suited for some of these things as fast as we're trying to get there. And here we're all together trying to work in this arena and all these governments that we see here. The biggest thing for us is that we don't want to hurt people. We want to keep our businesses moving. We want to protect the countries that we have and our customers, tourism, all of it. And there's a heavy lift here to get things moving. So we have some challenges. I think everyone has seen this slide before, and sort of what challenges we have to face and where we're at. I believe that some of the information we've seen here is that countries are not ready. They're just not there yet. This is a very complex sort of thing that we're looking at here. From Tropical Shipping's perspective, we really started making changes back around 2020, 2021, where we started implementing some engineering changes for all of our ships. We started putting, silicone paint on. We started using some Becker fins. We've been working this now for a handful of years. We're installing new bow shapes on vessels. We're looking at propeller designs. We've changed our schedules to run the ships as efficient as possible. We've worked with our customers to change our arrival times. We've done the immediate things that we can do to reduce our greenhouse gas footprint. The things that we definitely need to sort of work through, what we have here, as we can see, there's just some challenges that we have to work on and deal with. So we need to have safe, efficient ships for sure. That has to work through everybody. What we need in our ports the aspect that we seek is we have to have safety, we have to have, you know, efficiency in loading, we have to have modernized practices, equipment handling, and software tools for cargo flow. You know, when we're in ports and we have equipment handling down, it's very tough, super challenging. Shoreside staff, I think Suzette mentioned about training people and making sure that we can work as efficient as possible. Investing in people is hugely important. Dredging, that could be helpful too. That helps with economies of scale and making sure that we can use the biggest vessels to go in to make everyone as efficient as possible. If we can help make our ports and our people more efficient, I think they're going to increase opportunities for your local islands and businesses. I think that there's an immediate pickup for a lot of reasons if we can sort of modernize our ports. So what we see and what we can affect today, and when I mean affecting today, is the most fastest way to help the decarbonization. The infrastructure that we have throughout the Caribbean for ammonia or hydrogen or these other initiatives, they're going to come. But if we can invest today in cargo handling equipment to make sure that we don't have the kit that's down for weeks, sometimes months, waiting on parts. If we can look at and invest in people and trying to make sure that they have the desire to work, they want to get it done. I'm not sure if that's a government investment or both, but we have to get people to manage our ports better throughout all the trading areas. If we can engage in a path forward for, you know, the public-private sector for coordination, I think that that's super. It's wonderful. If we work in silos, it's going to be very, very tough. This whole thing, as far as what tropical shipping can do for decarbonization, we're working for it. We believe in this process. We want to get there, but I think it's going to be a little bit in the future. But our immediate impact for climate change and help would be to get equipment operating efficiently in the port and working as best as we can to turn ships around, for sure. Again, this seems like basic stuff that we're talking about here, but when we go to ports and we have 7 lifts an hour, that's just not efficient. It's not. When we're asked to leave ports because container ships, cruise ships come in, it's just not right either. So we have to look at our greenhouse gas. We have to work with IMO. We believe in being stewards of the environment. We've done some other initiatives where we have 6 straddle carriers here in the Port of Palm Beach that are combo units that work on battery and diesel power alike. We have solar panels that we put on top of our buildings. We've invested to what's logical and feasible today, but we will not try to force our customers in the nations that we carry cargo to with very challenging hurdles that are immediate going to be cost. So again, we stand committed to helping. We're looking for the ports and from infrastructure and for some financing to help make it so we're on our immediate path to help with this challenge. But some of this advanced things we believe will happen in the future. But today it's really about getting the infrastructure that's in our immediate control. I think really that's the highlight of what I wanted to get forward to everyone. Is that we really need to.
I am not sure if it's on my end, but I think, Michael, you were frozen the last 10 seconds.
Okay.
we did hear you wrap up your fantastic presentation, but you were cut out there for the
No
last
problem.
5 to 10
Yeah,
seconds.
sorry.
No, sorry.
I really think that, if I just forgive me 1 second, I think it's really important that we know that the future is out there. We know it is.
Yes.
We know it is. And if we truly believe in helping the environment today, there's some processes and things that we could do immediately that would help to say that we're moving in the right direction, that we're modernizing our ports, we're using the technology we have today to help immediately, and then we're going to look for the future to come when it's available.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And also looking forward to seeing you later on in the Q&A session. So thank you again, Michael, and the colleagues at Tropical Shipping for really being a partner in this context, right? In this challenging context. And thank you for providing such practical insights and for making it clear that the collaboration between the operators, the ports, the shipping line, and the regulators is really essential. So thank you for being part of this discussion from industry, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you later on in our Q&A session. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Our final speaker before we jump into our Q&A session is a dear friend of the SIP as well, Dwayne Squires, who currently serves as the acting portfolio manager in the Economic Infrastructure Division at the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, where he applies extensive experience in project oversight, infrastructure development, and strategic portfolio management. He previously spent 11 years as an operations officer at the bank and 14 years as a senior engineer with DNL Consultants, building a strong track record in civil engineering, project execution, and technical leadership. He holds the Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, and a Master of Science in Project Management from the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill. Dwayne, it's always a great pleasure to have you. So I'll leave you to it.
Okay, so thank you, Mona. Always a pleasure to be in your company, and I'm also grateful to have met my fellow presenters. Seems I'm wrapping up the innings, and usually at this point, a lot of things would have been said, and that certainly has been my experience. Some things I plan to say have already been said, but we'll get on with it. Let me just bring up my presentation. It should be. Okay, sorry, excuse me. Just give me one moment here. Okay, just confirm you're seeing the
Yes.
beginning. Great.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so thanks again for the invitation from OASIP. Always a pleasure to be here. On this first slide, I wanted to highlight the image at the bottom right, which sort of track the movements of shipping in our region. I think this was done by the ACP. And I thought it's quite an interesting graphic, especially talking about decarbonization, and just seeing the amount of ship movements and the routes that are there, which I believe still have to be formalized as it is. So just a bit of who we are. We are a multilateral development bank established in 1969. We exclusively serve the Caribbean, and that's particularly, as you can see, the states highlighted there, but those are primarily the English-speaking Commonwealth Caribbean, as well as Suriname and Haiti, 19 term borrowing member countries in all. And here's a list of them as well. All of these countries are small island development states, not huge populations, but as I say, we're insular, we're spread out. We have 3 continental states. We have some states which have multiple islands. It's quite a diverse mix, as it is generally. All right, in terms of our context, way back in 2015, we did do a study on the port industry. It's available online on our website for those who may be interested. And again, while that was back in 2015, the graphic on the right there showed some of the key bottlenecks at that point, and I'm pretty sure many of those still remain. I know there have been improvements over the years of some of those islands, and some of those countries, and we've contributed to some of that as well. But pretty much those remain. But what I found interesting in looking at that study, there really was no context of decarbonization. That did not come up in even some of the recommendations we had here in terms of the working with labor, retraining. We heard about that before. Nothing there, because in 2023, on top of all the other things to be dealt with, we got the IMO strategy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Obviously, introduce something else into the mix. I should say, in terms of the study, we are working with partners, including the ACP again, CAF, and others, to try to update some of the status of where things are at. Which, and I know sometimes we say things are overstudied, but these things need to be done so that we can then have resources program, make a case for resources to undertake all the things that are necessary to get us there. Some of the good news is that there is a policy, certainly for the Caribbean community, around energy, and there's some frameworks that support that as well, which, again, sometimes it can be hard to implement these things or to address these issues without having some sort of overarching framework. And certainly in terms of how our region is, something that brings the region together. So there is a policy on energy, and under that umbrella, then it can support some of the interventions that we can speak about. Okay, so in terms of the technical instruments, I mean, this is pretty much what we need to, as a bank, we would need to fund and resource. But I want to highlight first and foremost regulation, and essentially governance. We talk a lot about we know what is needed. I mean, technically, that's easy, that's studied. There have been studies over the years. I saw my colleague from MCC, forgive me, I'm not getting it right now, Suzette, certainly seems to be doing a lot of work there as well in terms of looking at what's happening. But really and truly, if we don't fix the regulations and the governance, a lot of these investments are not going to be either attractive, interim, or sustainable. And it's really important as we look to address these issues that we have those frameworks in place to leverage both regular public financing, public sector financing, as well as tap into the private sector financing that is there as well. We need to deal with the governance issue that needs to be dealt with. And again, these are all the areas where we provide resources and other institutions like us. Modernization, the study did conclude, and we all know this, the infrastructure, and I heard it mentioned earlier, is old. In some cases, it's hot. There's no cold storage on many of these ports. And if you're talking about cold storage, then we're talking about energy and tied into the decarbonization aspect. They're cramped. So as Michael pointed out, he can't get big ships in. You would like to get big ships in. And even in some cases, such as St. Lucia, you're competing with the cruise industry, so that takes precedence. So you have to wait and burn fuel while the cruise ships have their time at the dock, and then sometimes come to offload. All of those have costs and obviously implications when we're speaking about decarbonization. That speaks again to the size, and in a lot of instances, the ports are still mixed operations, which also basically speak to efficiency. Those things need to be dealt with. I heard data come out. That's another big thing. We don't measure enough. So I'm supposed to be moving on. So that's we think, and we think that these days we think in terms of digitalization, but it sort of supersedes that. The frameworks and so on, it needs to be in place to collect that data. Yes, are helped by digitalization, but we do need that. But again, digitalization will help with port efficiency, which will help us to decarbonize. And that's another area. We know about the different systems, the maritime single windows, the port community systems, the terminal operating systems, and so on. Electrification of both their landside assets and your marine assets. This is something, again, that we all know is needed. Not a lot of that we understand in the region. And we're also hampered, again, with these larger investments by the lack of scale. So for a port to order one boat, sometimes is not the most attractive thing. And we have had initial discussions, I think, with PMAC in terms of the Port Management Association of the Caribbean, for those who may not be familiar, about looking at where we can explore pooled procurement, which is being explored in other sectors within the region. And I think I want to interject here that a lot of the issues that are faced are not, some, yes, are particular to port operations, but in a broader sense, even in terms of procurement and looking at scale, there are lessons that you can learn from other sectors, and we certainly are able to support there because of our mandate. Renewable energy production, again, saw earlier Suzette mentioned some of her interventions there, and that is something we do support. The ports are in their large areas. They have large facilities, warehouses with a lot of potential. And you'll see that in one of the project I'll highlight at the end. Automation, I haven't seen this come out a lot, but we know about AI as it is. And I'm not presenting these in any order of, say, progression and development. Really and truly, we need to look for low-hanging fruit and build up from there. But this is an area where, again, there's opportunity to decarbonize just by being more efficient, and whether that be fully automated container yards. I believe I've seen some things on Instagram, haven't vetted them for truth about ports in other countries, but just having things that can be automated, sorry. And certification. Again, we had discussions earlier about the people factor. Everything that we do here is going to involve people. There's going to be certainly a lot of change management. I know OAS SIP has a lot of experience there in terms of, yes, you bring these systems, yes, you bring new infrastructure, yes, you bring new equipment, but the people need to operate these things. People need to input the data. People need to be comfortable that they're not going to be displaced by these changes. And from our perspective, again, in a broader lens, when we talk about human resource development and what we are aiming at, it is to have people with certifications that are transferable so that you can move throughout our region. You're not just going to a seminar and coming out with a participation certificate, but that is transferable. It has value. It can be used at University of Trinidad and Tobago, those types of things. So they recognize those things. So we need to keep the people in mind. And again, I'm at Suzette's presentation. I'm very glad to hear about the research that they've been doing. There is a need for that, to look into what works, the piloting, and then we can scale up from there. So technically, we believe these are the instruments that, and again, I think we know a lot of this. I just wanted to rehash, if you permit me. In terms of the financial instruments, we as a development bank, we do have grants and concession loans. Everyone wants grants, but those are always a limited resource. What I do want to say in terms of the difference between the development banks and the commercial banks is the development in our name. Because of that, and I think maybe the other entities are now catching up. We hear now about environmental, social, and governance. Those have been standards for most of the banks, those checks and balances. Suzette again mentioned the work around gender, making sure it's recognized that there are differences in men and women, and those need to be catered for, even as you're developing facilities, developing training, developing programs, managing change. So that is a distinction. I'm sorry, I'm making a pitch there, but outside of our broad manner of grants and concessional loans, climate is key, and climate resilience. So there are lines of climate financing which pertain to the port sector, definitely. I would say even on the shipping side, even though we haven't perhaps been traditionally supporting that side of it. I mentioned just two of the funds there. Now, these are notoriously difficult to tap into, and Suzette again mentioned the need for the assistance in the preparation of the funding proposals to these entities, and she mentioned her ability to assist, and certainly most of the banks would have that or have funds that are available to assist their grant funds, I should say. Public-private partnerships. Here, I would want to mention that we have a toolkit that can be used to help facilitate, it's not particular to the sector, but to help persons understand and start to what is behind that in terms of building your investment packages and so on. Again, but this is heavily rooted in having a regulatory framework that will support it. Many of our countries do not have that. Jamaica is probably standout in the region for having a PPP framework under which they can pursue a number of investments, and they're doing so certainly in water. I believe at their port as well, they would have reached out there. So I've highlighted the Global Infrastructure Facility just in terms of a resource, a grant resource, which is specifically targeted at exploring the feasibility of investments that could attract private financing. So just want to highlight that one. We're a technical partner of that facility, and that's available to explore those types of investments. And then blending. There are different pots in terms of financing. Right now, renewable energy is big because of the climate and the mitigation and so on. Climate resilience generally, which is both adaptation and mitigation. And then we heard again about gender mainstreaming. There's just three of the pots that are there right now. And the key thing there is that if you can, in your investments, see how you can encapsulate all of these areas. And generally, if you do approach, say, a development bank, they will sort of look into holistically what is needed in terms of an operation. So yes, your wharf might be deteriorated and you might need to expand it, but the assessment won't stop there. It will look at, okay, who are the personnel who are operating there, what are the technologies that are necessary. There will be that deep dive. And out of that, and you identify the different areas, then there is you're able to blend different resources and lower the overall cost of financing. So again, there is a rigor that is applied when we consider these investments, but ultimately it is to help identify what's the best sustainable option for a client. And in terms of outside of sort of the direct financing that the previously mentioned items would have sort of supported, there are a number of green bonds and sustainability linked bonds which are now being explored. We are exploring, I believe, some blue bonds. And I don't want us to feel in any way that we are not able to get these things structured. Belize, for example, I think either had the first as well as the largest blue bond, which they're pumping into different investments. These essentially function as funds, really, as opposed to being perhaps project specific, but are being explored in the region and are, again, may go beyond the scope of say a port authority looking at, but it could be also explored there. So these are things we are also looking into, which could be sector specific, could be project specific, or it may just be a national type of intervention. But these are areas where you can raise the financing to support all the things we know are necessary. I wanted to highlight our latest project. Well, the one that's just been actually opened, the St. Vincent and Grenadines Port Modernization Project. This is an old picture. It was actually opened, I believe, last month officially. US $130 million loan and US $33.5 million in grant. A new climate resilient cargo port facility. And again, this sort of addressed some of the issues we flagged earlier. So there was no dedicated operation. This is now dedicated to cargo. It is climate resilient. I was informed by a climate risk and vulnerability assessment. The concessionality that was provided by the $33 million grant really helped to make the economic case for this investment for what is really a small country and a small economy. Renewable energy is integrated there. So we have the mitigation aspect and decarbonization aspect there through 112 kilowatt solar PV system, as well as the aspects of their fleet. The landside assets are going to be electrified, forklifts and so on. Also, there's the energy efficiency side. So the buildings, the main buildings and the office building, I believe, have building monitoring systems, which are meant to, again, increase the efficiency. So yes, you may have LED bulbs, but the building will now turn off lights, have occupancy sensors, that type of thing, adjust the air conditioning and so on to also help with the decarbonization argument. And then on the social side, there is the aspect, again, we can never forget the people, and that was integrated into this project as well. So that's it for me. Thank you very much again for the opportunity, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. That was fantastic. And yes, you shared just some of the key aspects that we heard from our previous speakers, but I think that just shows that we're all on the same page, right? And you highlighted very, very importantly, again, the role of our human capital, right? These are supposed to be human-centered initiatives. And so I really enjoyed that you also, spoke about the change management. That's something we've worked on together for projects on port digitalization. But that also applies here, right? Because this will require us to change how we are going about our business in the future. So thank you very much, Dwayne, and thank you so much to the colleagues at CDB for always supporting our work, and congratulations to you, of course, and the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Port Authority for the recently opened new port in Kingstown. Very, very exciting. We also had the honor of working on that together, so that was fantastic. We are so ahead of schedule. I'm loving this. That means we can get right into our Q&A session, and we'll have some more time to dive a little bit deeper into today's discussion with some questions for our panelists. And I would like to invite all three of you, Michael, Suzette, and Dwayne, back onto our virtual stage. And my first question, in fact, is for Suzette. Suzette, you mentioned it in your presentation, the IMO's discussion on the adoption of the net zero framework is pending, right? But could you remind us again, you touched on some in your presentation, but could you remind us again, what are the most practical energy efficiency measures that Caribbean ports can implement in the short term to reduce emissions? What are some of your experiences in the Caribbean?
Thank you very much for that question, Mona. From our perspective, even though the net zero framework is still under discussion, there is still no need for the ports to wait on what they are supposed to be doing as well. The most practical short-term opportunities, as was discussed, would be like the low-hanging fruit, the low-cost, high-impact, energy-efficient measures. So that right away you see emission reductions, and you would start strengthening your competitiveness one time. So we like to see, well, it's always being said, we cannot improve what we cannot measure. So ports always need to be able to establish their greenhouse gas baselines, where just the understanding of how we use electricity, the types of equipment that we're using, what could be an immediate saving one time. There was something that Michael spoke about too, like where it is that we improve in the port call efficiency. So if it is that we have better berth planning, if it is that we have reduced waiting and idle times in ports, we move in towards just-in-time shipping. Everything that we could possibly do in collaboration will have an effect. Also, Dwayne spoke about the, like switching out of lighting systems when it is that we're using smart technologies, idle reduction policies. And a big part of it is getting your people on board. So having everybody understanding why it is that we have these things and why we are implementing these things, it will be small steps, but it's going to have a greater impact. And holding everything coming towards digitalization, where it is that we keep in data so people can see where it is that, we are making a difference. And of course, all these little actions feed into a bigger picture. It feeds into their what we like to call, I wrote it down, green port action plan. So if it is that you have your action plan, and yes, we're talking about the short term now, but of course your long term is your action plan too. So if it is that you align that action plan already with your IMO GHG strategy, then it's basically tying all the points together. You are doing a great job within your operations, increasing your reputation, and then you're also putting yourself out there, showing that you're ready for investors and for development partners. And then, of course, you could, from the smaller projects, you go on to bigger projects. So that's basically what the smaller, what they can implement in the short term.
Fantastic. Thank you, Suzette. So short term, looking at the low-hanging fruits, and long term, looking at that green port action plan.
Yes.
Wonderful. I got it right. Michael, my next question is for you. You touched on it a little bit in your presentation, the need for that collaboration, right? And how, from your experience, can port operators in the Caribbean and shipping lines collaborate more effectively to ensure compliance with IMO regulations while maintaining competitiveness and service efficiency?
That's good. Thank you. I would like to comment the St. Vincent port that was recently shown by Dwayne, that it's pretty nice. We've called it a few times now, and that's a really big improvement for sure. It's congratulations, right? That's really something good. I mean, collaboration is always it's always good. It's going to help. You know, from a ship owner's side with net zero framework and CII, it's really challenging for us because every year ships have to get more and more efficient. It's a huge challenge. You know, some of the simple things like low hanging fruit. Certain ports, when it rains, we're not allowed to work. They stop. So, you know, I mentioned earlier when crews have to, when our vessels have to leave because of cruise ships coming in, right? There's not enough infrastructure. And then when we go outside and we have to wait for 12 to 16 hours to free up the berth, and we're sitting there just burning more fuel, and that's responsible for us, right? That's our greenhouse gas emissions. And, you know, the shippers are asked to sort of pay for that and to work through it. So as far as collaboration goes, having strong port plans and berthing plans coming in so we can work efficiently, right? The ports need to communicate with the agents need to communicate with the pilots need to communicate with the ship, and let's try to get in there and work as efficiently as possible, the best we can. And if the infrastructure and collaboration between public and private can happen, as how do we share berth time, how do we get the schedules right, you know, how do we not interact crews and container ships through collaboration would be helpful as well, because the inefficient operations that happen in the port, they're solely impacting us on our CII scores, and that's a real challenge for us. You know, the other thing to circle back quickly on, as I mentioned, Tropical has been investing in our vessels for years, right? We spent millions of dollars to try to meet these goals. When we look at our further and future ships, and we look at what the Caribbean is going to offer in terms of having that new fuel source, where it's going to be, that's going to take some collaboration as well. And it's going to push us to work together to figure that out. But we are always looking to improve. We're always looking to collaborate, and we'll try to find that best path forward as soon as we can. Hope I answered your question.
You did. And I think part of this session, right? Part of this webinar today is to highlight the importance of collaboration. And I think we have the right folks here on the call. And Michael, you again mentioned efficiency, right? Efficiency of operations is really key. And that's also something that Suzette highlighted. So thank you very much for that. Dwayne, my friend, you're up next. We've heard, and you mentioned it in your presentation, also from the work you do, right, in the region's port sector. Many Caribbean ports face limited access to capital, and of course also technical resources and infrastructure. What financing, you mentioned it a little bit in your presentation, but maybe you can remind us what financing models or partnerships, whether that's public-private, or blended, do you see as most promising to support both the decarbonization and climate resilience investments?
Okay. Thanks again, Mona. So I'm not sure I can distinguish that and say that because part of that could be. I say that because in some of our ports have moved, say, to landlord type operations and so on, where they have embraced the private sector side. For others, that does mean change. And we know labor is strong. It's a strong political side there. So I think that the models can vary and will be country specific. I think what is key though is getting the undergirding structure correct, the governance, the frameworks, and so that you can attract financing, or whether that, again, that comes from government. A government is then asked to support you or back your loan, or if you're going to bring a private sector actor into the whole scheme of things. So and then to understand the process of that as well. For instance, the climate finance, as I said, there is a long preparation time. So depending on your strategic plan or where you want to be, I think you need to get started and then see perhaps which model will suit your timeline, and your budget. So I can't answer definitively, but there are options. And again, our role is to work with you to identify the best option, as most banks should be, as it were, and that will also include the context of what the people want, or the politics also speak to as well.
Thank you, Dwayne. You always get the trickiest questions from
Yeah,
us,
yeah,
but
thanks.
no, I mean, that was perfectly answered, and you said it very well. We're not just looking at modernizing operations, right? But also port governance, right? How we do business. So I think that's a great takeaway. Thank you so much, Dwayne. And I promise the next question won't be as tricky. Maybe.
Okay. The second one? You said just one, Mona.
Susie, how can smaller ports in the Caribbean with limited technical as well as human resources leverage your organization, MTCC's guidance to start these decarbonization projects?
Okay, so basically, these smaller Caribbean ports, they tend to find themselves, having these goals that seem out of reach. We've seen it where it is at the smaller Caribbean ports, they feel that decarbonization is far reaching for them because they're already lacking so much of the technical stuff. And of course, this is where MTCC-Caribbean sees that we can make one of the biggest differences there. Understanding that it's not just technology. First of all, it's the guidance. So, in order to establish these baselines that I spoke about, it's not even requiring sophisticated equipment, an Excel sheet collecting data that we've already been collecting, fuel records, electricity bills, operational data that's already existing. And every port should possibly be recorded somewhere. And once we creating this baselines with them, now you can see where you can have specific goals. You could have some kind of realistic measure that you want to achieve and implement. What we also do is, of course, we provide a lot of capacity building, as I said in my presentation. We train port personnel in all of our workshops. We keep everybody up to date on all the latest developments and what are the requirements. And what I always like to add is that we ourselves as a team, we are furthering our research every single time. We have furthering research in PhDs in energy management, in the net zero framework, in maritime education. It's building our confidence within ourselves. It's building the confidence of the people that we speak to and we guide. And we're reducing also, the need for that cost for external consultations as well. So having MTCC there to guide and to also help put the project concepts now into a proposal, because a lot of the times the ports do have ideas, they have ideas about what they want to do, but sometimes they don't have, how to package this project and put forward a proposal. So we bridge that gap. We identify what are the financial opportunities, and then we help put together that project. And what I wanted to also add is that we have a lot of strong allies and networking within the Caribbean region. People like Jennifer and Michael from Tropical Shipping that, would give data so readily so that we could do our research as well. So once it is that these smaller communities and smaller ports, if they rely on us, we also have access to certain networking. So this is how we plan to help the ports going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Suzette. And it's really a Caribbean-centered solution, right? For these issues that you're providing. So I I want to emphasize that, right? Because we're speaking today specifically about the challenges and opportunities for the Caribbean port sector. So you are really an institution that is leading in addressing these issues and providing solutions and providing guidance. And I'm sure that many people will be reaching out to you after today's session. Thank you. Michael, I have a question for you as well. How do you see the adoption of decarbonization technologies such as shore power and other portside technologies affecting the operations in the Caribbean and the costs for shipping lines? And what strategies do you think? Just a light question for you.
So we've been looking at this a little bit as we venture out into what our next generation of ships look like. We've been benchmarking against some of the other large ship owners that have been starting to install this on their vessels. There's a fairly significant cost that goes into building that into a vessel. The ports around the world that may be using it, it's out there, but they're very specific ports. Some of the other ship owners that we've spoken to that have put these on their vessels, they haven't used them in months, if not years, and they're afraid when they go to start up, it's basically going to be not maintained or not work because of the advanced technology that's in there to run that. My first thought would be specific to the Caribbean would be is, I think if you invested it potentially in the right place, if there were solar panels or there were something to produce the energy feeding the ship that was not creating the same CO2 that the ship is creating. In other words, how many Caribbean islands are still using fossil fuels for their own city power? So if you're putting 3.2 tons of CO2 out in the environment from a shore-based plant, and you're putting out 3.2 tons of CO2 power generation from a ship, did we properly use money well for something that's in between the power plant and the ship, where we could use that same money to invest in better infrastructure, better power plant, better equipment, in sort of not waste the money, not waste the funds, right? Everyone in the Caribbean is cost conscious. Our business models are tight. So I think, yes, it could help in the future, but we have to holistically look at the program. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And I see Suzette and Dwayne nodding as you share this. So thank you, Michael. Dwayne, I have a final question for you, and then I will have one final question for all three of you. And I saw there are some questions in the chat. We are a little bit strapped for time. So whoever asked a question in the chat, if you would like to share with us your contact information, your email address, we will make sure to share your questions with our esteemed speakers here, and I'm sure they'll be happy to get back to you. Dwayne, my final question for you, this is a regional platform, right? A platform for regional cooperation, and you mentioned earlier the Port Management Association of the Caribbean, OASIP, who CDP collaborates with. So kind of with that in mind, what role can that type of regional collaboration among Caribbean ports play in attracting investment for decarbonization projects, and can CDB facilitate such regional partnerships, or what is your take on that?
Yeah, well, definitely. Part of our strategy and our responsibility is to foster regional collaboration and integration. So if you take that even as with like a conference or a meeting, we sponsor those dialogues where can come together, and preferably face to face. I'm sure you would agree, Mona, is preferable to come together that way rather than speak to initials on a screen. So that is essential. The advocacy, bringing persons together, even in coming to this forum, and I have never met Suzette. I have learned a whole lot of what's happening in her end. So it's essential to do that. I mean, even the case and the deferral, I think, on the decision on the implementation of the same strategy we're talking about was a result of advocacy and persons coming together. So I would really, from where we sit, we would like to encourage persons to get on board of whatever institutions are already there, or organizations, because there is strength in those numbers. You will benefit from the knowledge sharing. You will learn that you're not alone in your challenges, and you need to come also with a willingness to share or to agitate with the powers that be to share information and the data we're talking about, so we can build those cases, because there are opportunities in terms of scale, whether if you're talking about equipment, tugs, cranes, forklifts, whatever. And as I said before, there's work there in other sectors where they're trying to break those silos, those barriers, so that we can really efficiently access some of these investments. Because I don't want to discount, so just to finish off, I don't want to discount the time it takes to prepare these funding proposals, right? And if you can come together and we can do regional interventions or projects. So, but it does take persons saying we will come together. For us, a regional project is 2 countries, anything more than 1. Yeah, but there's nothing stopping 5 countries getting together, having common goals and saying, okay, let's do this thing together. So it's absolutely essential. And I think when we're talking about and Michael's side of the shipping, which is touching every country, again, it also becomes essential that we have that collaboration going on, and that willingness to share not only the successes, but the failures, so that we don't have to repeat these things as we go along. I hope that answered your question, Mona. I have nothing else. So
It did. A very important point, the need to also share the information, right? Because that's sometimes we tend to gatekeep and maybe don't want to share certain information, but that is also really key. And like you said, also share the failures, and because those lessons learned are valuable.
yeah,
So thank you very much.
if you allow me on that. I know it's short on time, but I would say, I
Please.
know, again, this is experience. We have made provision for persons to go to these dialogues, and some countries just don't attend. So again, I just want to emphasize we do our part, but there really needs to be that push to be willing to engage and get among your peers, especially. Thanks.
Understood. If we at SIP OAS can in any way facilitate that, we'll be happy to do that.
Great.
So as we conclude this very interesting discussion, I know there's some questions online. We are a little bit strapped for time. I know some folks have been sharing their contact information, so we are taking note of that, and we are taking note of your questions. We will share those with our esteemed panelists. But as we're now concluding this discussion, I will leave you with one question. I ask you to answer it very shortly and precisely. And it is, what is the one single most important action or takeaway that you would encourage Caribbean ports to prioritize over the next 5 years to advance decarbonization and climate resilience in a way that brings benefits to the Caribbean region? So whether that's training, digitalization, data, the one key single most important action or takeaway you would like to leave our audience with today. Suzette, you can go first.
Okay, thank you. So I will go back just to the Green Port Action Plan. If that is one of my greatest takeaways for everyone who's listening here today, it would be that we recognize that a port action plan would become an anchor for everything else that we want to achieve. Once we understand our baselines, once we understand our inventories, we can achieve, set achievable targets. We will prioritize what we can achieve, when we can achieve it. It's all about the planning. And sometimes it is, as I said, we see that we have such a great task ahead of us. And when we break it down into smaller little parts, it's getting done. Something may not be able to be funded the entirety of a project, but parts of it can be funded. We can get sponsorship for the rest of it. We can do different ways of achieving that goal, but we will not have that goal if we don't have our action plan. So once we have a structured, data-driven action plan, we will be able to, strengthen our climate resilience within the ports, and we will be, not staying behind while all other ports will be moving forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Suzette. Michael, what about you? What would you say is the one single most important takeaway that you would like to leave our audience with today?
I think we need to take the time to understand the gaps and what we currently have in looking for the decarbonization desire. We need time to understand what location, what infrastructure we invested in the time, so as just not to financially destroy, the Bahamas, the Caribbean, South America, right? We need to understand it. It's coming very, very quick, and we need to work together, to focus on what we can immediately control, like we talked about today, for efficiencies, but just not push our customers and citizens to reach an unachievable goal, right? We have to fill in those gaps. So if we can work efficiently and understand the gaps and come together on how to decarbonize, I think we could get there.
Thank you, Michael. Dwayne, you have the last word.
Thank you, Mona. I want to endorse what Suzette said. Have a plan. I would add to that, make sure that plan includes the collaboration aspect, to look outside of just what you want for the port and what you're working there, but also look beyond to how you can collaborate with, whether it's joining certain institutions, promoting advocacy. That should be part of the plan as well, because we're not going to overcome these things. Even to Michael's point, we're not going to be able to stand up against the AMO or ask for delays or ask for special concessions without that coordinated approach. So have a plan, but make sure it includes working with your peers and your stakeholders.
Fantastic. So have that unified front and unified approach.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So as we wrap up, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers, Suzette Balcaran, Michael Wardwell, and Dwayne Squires, for sharing your most valuable expertise. You are all three powerhouses in your own right. So your insights were fantastic. And I think they really highlighted that decarbonization and port modernization for Caribbean ports is critical for building a resilient and competitive future for our port sector in the region. And at the same time, we learned and we heard from you, and we recognize the significant challenges that ports face, including the limited access to financing, the need for enhanced technical capacity, and also adapting infrastructure to meet the new international regulations that will come. And I think today's Caribbean-centered discussion showed that when we embrace collaboration, we take advantage of financing opportunities, and we take advantage of new technologies, that Caribbean ports can overcome these challenges that we're facing while supporting economic growth and the socioeconomic development in our region. That's something that Michael highlighted, right? Is that at the end of the day, it is about the people. So I would like to thank you once again all for participating and for joining us today, and for your commitment, all three of your organizations, and also that of our audience, right? Your commitment to advancing sustainable port operations in the Caribbean. And to formally close today's webinar, I invite Jorge back on the stage, Chief of the SIP Secretariat, to provide his closing remarks. Jorge, are you there? There you are.
I am here. Thank you, Mona, and thank you to the three panelists. Seriously, this has been a very enlightening and informative panel on several things, and I'm not going to even try and summarize because everybody said so many important and relevant things. That said, I would like to just briefly point your attention to Suzette's presentation, that even they're applying this special cover to the hulls of the ships to make them have less friction with the water and thus be more fuel efficient. All the electrification on the ports that is taking place in tropical, and like Michael mentioned, also Suzette mentioned, which is brilliant, that ports and terminals can reach out to them to help them structure a concept note for possible financing by institutions. Which brings me then to Dwayne's intervention in the Caribbean Development Bank, and thank you as well, Dwayne. There is an institution in the Caribbean which is designed to assist the member countries in their development. And this, of course, includes port development and energy transition and all the important and relevant issues and topics that were discussed today. Before we close, let me give you a couple of admin announcements. Please do remember, and I've put them on the chat, that the SIP has and will have available as of tomorrow both the recording of this wonderful webinar as well as the presentations given by the speakers. And these you can access for free. And I've also shared a link to our guide to environmental certification and sustainability reporting for the ports of the Americas. This guide is available in English and Spanish, also for free, and you can download it from the portal. That said, we have updated the guide because this guide is from 2021 or 2022. And we will next week, we will upload on that same link, the new updated guide. And this is something that was also talked about here. In order to improve, we need to measure. And in order to measure that baseline, we need to know what we're going to measure, what we're going to gauge our progress in energy transition and decarbonization. And this guide will help you do that. So with that said, my thanks to our three speakers for donating their time and expertise and knowledge. Our thanks to the audience who had wonderful comments in the chat and some questions, which, like Mona said, we will get to the speakers, but it would be important for us to have as well your data so that you can contact them directly if you want to, because we didn't have time to address that now. This will be our last webinar for the year 2025. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that this is our 10th or 11th webinar this year. We do plan to keep this schedule for next year. Hopefully our first webinar will be in the first quarter of the year, maybe at the end of February or beginning of March at the latest. Please, you will receive invitations and it will be announced in the portal. With that, I thank the Real ID technical team. I thank Mona for wonderful conduction and moderation of this webinar, Monica Blanco from my team who organized, and of course the three speakers and their institutions for lending your support to SIP activities. That said, I wish you a very, very happy Thanksgiving next week and a wonderful Christmas and holiday season, and only the very, very best for next year. So until we meet again, everything is available on the portal. Please do remember that. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you to our outstanding speakers and to all participants for your engagement today. The path to port decarbonization in the Caribbean requires collaboration, innovation, and commitment. Today's discussion has provided valuable insights into the financial and technical tools available to make this transition possible. We encourage you to continue. Thank you to our outstanding speakers and to all participants for your engagement today. The path to port decarbonization in the Caribbean requires collaboration, innovation, and commitment. Today's discussion has provided valuable insights into the financial and technical tools available to make this transition possible. We encourage you to continue these conversations within your organizations and networks. Together, we can build a more sustainable maritime future for our region. Thank you once again for joining us.